good feeling to have when you can look at the film and say, we can correct this and we can be better. And so I think that's how you leave this tournament, is with that feeling, is that we're a good team, but we have potential to be a really, really good team if we do this, and this just a little bit better than what we did in Asheville. And so with that, fellas, as it usually turns into when I have y'all both on the podcast, I've got a couple questions. I mean, really mainly just one main question that this really struck me last night during the game. And Anthony, I'll let you take this first after I ask the question. I think right now RJ Davis may be Carolina's best perimeter player. What do y'all think about him? Because we know we have the capability of him to do it. Putting him and letting him run the offense and move Caleb Love to the 2 guard and let Caleb Love kind of just settle into the college game. Am I a little crazy, or is there some possibility for that to happen?
I think there's definitely a possibility that it can happen because we've seen RJ handle the ball a pretty decent amount out of the gate. We've seen him be a little more efficient in terms of turnovers. But the only thing that kind of concerns me is I just don't know if Caleb's game is fit to the 2 role as well as RJ's. RJ can succeed and has succeeded when in certain catch and shoot situations where Caleb is a guy that seems to like to create a little more on his own. We'll have to see. I think that's something that could definitely be toyed around with a little bit. I think that when Anthony Harris comes back, that'll make it even more interesting as well. But yeah, I think there's definitely a chance that could happen. I don't think you're crazy in terms of thinking that it could happen. But do I think it is going to happen anytime soon? I'm not really sure because I think going into this game against Iowa, you're probably just going to try to run with the same group that you got. And Caleb Love, maybe, just hope that he can continue to build on what we saw from him in Maui, get a little bit better, a little bit smarter with the basketball, and just go from there because, the focus, of course, in that game is going to be on the inside. But I think it's definitely something that's interesting to watch as we go through the next, couple of weeks and head towards conference season to see if maybe there is a little bit of a move to try to give RJ Davis more of the control when he is on the floor along with Caleb.
That's actually a thought that I had while watching the game. It's kind of interesting to see there for a while the long stretches that Davis was kind of handling the ball and running the offense. And that was one thing that kind of stuck out during Caleb Love's recruitment was, is he a guard? Is he too much of a scoring guard to be a facilitating point guard? And Roy, in his senior year of high school, they were trying to really focus on getting him to be more of a facilitator and a distributor as opposed to just a pure scoring point guard. I think that idea is very realistic. I also don't see it happening soon, but I don't see it happening soon, not because it's not a good idea, but because I think that Roy is absolutely dedicated to fixing Caleb Love's right now tendencies to turn over the ball, not make the best decisions with it. And I think that he'll let that play out and see what progress can be made before making any drastic changes. But as Anthony said too, when Anthony Harris comes back and could lock down the number 2 spots, but if he does that, that does not mean that RJ Davis is going to the bench. To me, that means RJ Davis is going to the 1, and then Caleb Love and Anthony Harris will more so share that 2 role more than anything. But that's kind of the fun thing about the backcourt right now is there is so many different pieces that can be interchanged and people that can play different positions. So hopefully Caleb Love continues to grow, gets more experience, makes better decisions. And I think overall down the stretch, it's probably in our best interest to still have him playing point guard because I can think that he can push it at a different level than Davis. But RJ Davis has definitely played well enough to cause the discussion.
Okay. I agree with both of you guys. So I've got a follow-up question. And And maybe it's just because he has a lot of expectations coming in. And Mark, should we be worried about Garrison Brooks and the way he's played to start the season?
I'm not overly concerned because for me, the result of who Brooks is now and how he is playing is more a result of who is around him and having additional options. Last year he was the scoring option. This year he is one scoring option of probably 6 on any given night. Do I wish that there were better mental plays in terms of, just his effort is certainly there, but better passes, less turnovers, better shot selection, more efficient, which I think his efficiency or lack thereof is a direct result of kind of his bad shots. And more efficiency at the free throw line, yes. But I'm not yet hitting the panic button on him because, again, I mean, you don't go from what you were last year and your breakout year and being an all-ACC player of the year potentially to just what he is now. I think it's definitely more of a byproduct of who is around him and that there's so much more distribution throughout the entire offense.
That's a very good point. I think, especially if you're just one of those people that likes to look on the stat sheet, look at how many points were scored, you would think, okay, well, Garrison Brooks is having a terrible season as opposed to last year. But like you said, there was a point last year, especially once Cole Anthony went down with an injury, where you said to yourself, okay, if Garrison Brooks is not scoring 25-30 in this game, we are going to lose, and we are probably going to lose by a large margin. This year, it's completely different. His role, it's had to be adjusted a little bit because, believe it or not, even with the struggles in the game against Texas, in the Maui final from 3, this team is a better perimeter shooting team than a year ago. But yeah, I think the concerning thing is that the shot selection is it's mind-boggling at times. Some of the shots that he takes, it's just it's not that you don't trust him to take some of those shots because we saw him make some of those shots a year ago, but right now he hasn't been able to establish the rhythm, which is another reason why I'm not overly concerned because he wasn't a guy that just came out last year out of the gate and was destroying teams. That was something that took him a little while to get going. But I think, even though he hasn't seen the ball going in the basket, he still takes some similar shots where, he'll get himself into tough situations where he's got to throw up a bad layup. A lot of the stuff has been, just really trying to, going away from the basket, trying to shoot, and that's just not really his game. Look, he's developed as a shooter, believe me. He's, a much better shooter than when he first came to Carolina. But he's still not a guy that you should be, taking fadeaway jump shots with. That's not his game at all. So he's really that's the main thing that's maybe a little concerning to me is just the shot selection. But I still think that when you look at him, he's one of 4 bigs that if any night could go off, can have a big game, and he's still one of the veteran leaders on this team. He's still playing well on the defensive end. Again, I haven't really dove into the numbers in depth yet, especially because it's so early in the season. But so far, it looks like he's a little bit of a better rebounder than he was a year ago. So there are some things to still be encouraged about. The good news is that, again, the team around him is much better than a year ago. So even if he isn't going to be that same Garrison Brooks that we saw last year, the team around him is so much better that they don't necessarily need him to be that. If he can be that, fantastic. That would make this team that much better, would probably solidify them as a top 3 team in the ACC. But if not, Carolina's got pieces around him that can sort of pick their play up, which they will as the season goes along, and still gives them a chance to be a top 3 team.
Yeah, I think you're both right. I think, it's not time to panic because it's early. And I think a lot of this, he's just adjusting to being the number 1 option. And these defenses are now scheming. They had a whole summer to get ready to how to take him away. So I think it'll just come in time. I think he's got to get smarter with his shots. I think I think that's pretty evident. He doesn't have a back to the basket game. He's not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's got a face up game. He's got a modern day big man offensive skill set, and I think he just needs to get back to utilizing that. And I think once the guards figure out how to get the ball to him in his spots, it'll come a little bit easier for him because I feel like he still feels like he has to put the ball up and shoot almost every time he gets the ball in the paint, and he doesn't have to. So I think it'll come and go as this offense comes and goes, and this offense will evolve as much as any Carolina offense we've seen under Roy Williams. This team will not look the same in January as it won't look the same in February. It won't be the same in March. This team will. We're hoping this may be the team that gets better every month. That's always the same about Roy Williams' team. This team really may emphasize that, and they really may be the standard to a team that gets better the longer they play. So with that, that's a look at Maui. I think we can all agree 2-1, you take it. It's better than going 1-2 or 0-3. You got a big win against Stanford, and you competed really, really hard against a team that's as better as a team as you're going to play all year, and they look to be a legitimate team in the Big 12 with all that experience and the added talent of Greg Brown in that roster. So we'll quickly, before we get out of here, the game against Elon, which is scheduled for December 12th, is on postponement right now due to COVID issues within the Phoenix program. We know that's a possibility. It's going to happen during this COVID era. It's going to happen in the ACC season where Carolina's going to have games postponed, or they may have to reschedule, or this, that, and the other. The question I have for you guys is how important it is for Carolina to either play that game or find an opponent to play. Because if you don't play that game, that's only 6 non-conference games. And I think we all can agree that they need as many games before the ACC game as they can get. Anthony, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that this question has a lot to do with what happens when this team goes to Iowa. If they win that game, I'm not as concerned with the fact that they don't play this game. If they don't, there's a legitimate possibility that, then you have to go and play Ohio State. That's a good basketball team. I'm not saying that Carolina would get beaten in that game because I think Ohio State's good, but I don't think that Ohio State is on the same level as Iowa. Not even sure they're on the same level as Texas, which, again, Texas isn't just one of those teams that Carolina always has trouble with, regardless of how good they are as a basketball team. But still, if you lose that game to Iowa, especially if that team can really dominate you, which could happen because they are one of the nation's best teams. I mean, the night that we're recording this, they are up by 30 on Western Illinois. Now, granted, Western Illinois is not a great team, but Luka Garza had 35 and 10, and he had 27 in the first half. So they're a very, very good basketball team. So Carolina might need a game in between there or even after that Ohio State game to sort of get themselves calmed down, get a win, and get themselves refocused for ACC play. Because this is the type of season where things can snowball on you quickly when you have the type of schedule that Carolina has. It's not easy to stop losing. That's the thing. It's really hard to, when you start losing 2, 3, 4 games, it's hard to get that win that will slow everything down. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. It's never easy. You're going to have to fight because you're coming in with that mindset that we've got to get this monkey off our back. So it would be nice. I think there's still a possibility that game, gets delayed. I know you were talking about it a little bit before we got on here to do the podcast, that there is enough time where Elon could get out of the protocol and maybe get a game in with Carolina. But if not, I'm pretty sure that Carolina will look for another game. More than likely, they'll look in-state. And the other thing is that, if the concern or how likely is that to happen, you got to remember that there are other teams that are going to have games canceled. I know they said the other night that it was 79% of the games so far this year have been played. But there are going to be other teams that are going to have to take games off. That's going to leave other teams without opponents. That could be where Carolina finds their other out-of-conference opponent that we look at, from either a non-power conference Maybe they even dip into D2. Who knows? There are teams that have been dipping into the lower ranks as well. Carolina hasn't done that in my memory. It's probably been done before, but it's been a very long time. But I would not be shocked if Carolina adds